They whisper your name like it's a curse, a taboo syllable that might summon the very force they fear. Your reputation has become a specter, haunting their thoughts, infiltrating their conversations, yet never fully acknowledged. They are terrified to speak about you, not because of what you've done, but because of what you represent, a mirror reflecting their own inadequacies. Your ascent was not a gentle climb, but a violent eruption, shattering the ceilings they believed were unbreakable. Now, in the aftermath, they tiptoe around your legacy, afraid that uttering your name might expose their own stagnation. In the corridors of power, your influence is palpable. Decisions are made with your potential reaction in mind. Strategies are devised to counter your possible moves, yet your name remains unspoken. It's as if acknowledging you would validate your dominance, and they can't afford that. They prefer to operate in denial, crafting narratives that exclude you, hoping to diminish your impact through omission. But silence is not erasure. It's an admission of fear. Your reputation was not built on charm or consensus, but on results and resilience. You didn't seek approval, you demanded respect. Each victory, each breakthrough was a testament to your unyielding will. They watched, initially amused, then concerned, and finally in awe. But admiration turned to fear when they realized they couldn't predict you, couldn't control you. You became an anomaly in their system, a variable they couldn't account for. They attempt to undermine you through insinuations, through half-truths, and veiled criticisms. But these efforts are futile, for your reputation is not a fragile construct, but a fortress built on undeniable achievements. Each attack only highlights their desperation, their inability to accept that someone could rise without their endorsement. They are trapped in a paradox, unable to acknowledge you, yet unable to ignore you. In private, they study your methods, dissect your decisions, trying to decode the formula of your success. They mimic your strategies, adopt your innovations, all while pretending to be original. But imitation without understanding is hollow, and their efforts only serve to reinforce your superiority. They become shadows of your brilliance, echoes of your voice, forever chasing a standard they can't comprehend. Your presence challenges their narratives, disrupts their comfort zones. You are a living testament to what's possible beyond their limitations, and that terrifies them. Because if you could transcend the constraints they accepted, then their excuses crumble. Your success invalidates their complacency, forces them to confront the uncomfortable truth that they settled for less. They construct alliances, form coalitions, all aimed at containing your influence. But these are built on fear, not conviction. Their unity is fragile, a facade masking the underlying anxiety. They know that as long as you exist, their dominance is threatened, and so they conspire in hushed tones, crafting plans that never materialize, paralyzed by the very fear they refuse to name. Your reputation has become a legend, a myth that grows with each retelling. Stories of your exploits circulate, embellished by those who admire you and distorted by those who envy you. But regardless of the version, the core remains the same. You are a force to be reckoned with, and that recognition, even unspoken, cements your place in their psyche. They avoid direct confrontation, opting instead for passive resistance, but their avoidance is a confession, a silent acknowledgement of your dominance. They fear that engaging with you would expose their weaknesses, that any interaction would tilt the balance further in your favor. And so they maintain their distance, hoping that silence will shield them from your influence. But you don't need their acknowledgement. Your reputation thrives in the void of their silence, growing stronger with each unspoken word. You are the embodiment of potential realized, of boundaries broken. And as long as you continue to rise, their fear will persist, a constant reminder of what they could have been had they dared to speak your name. They never had the stomach to face you directly. That would require a spine, one forged in the fires of self-respect and boldness. No, They'd rather dance around confrontation like cowards in a masquerade, masks painted with half smiles and downcast eyes. They play coy because the truth burns. If they stepped up and challenged you, they'd crumble under the weight of their own shallowness. So they opt for a quieter attack, passive resistance. They pretend not to hear, not to care, not to notice. But behind that silence is a trembling hand, a racing pulse, a mind haunted by the thought of your gaze catching theirs. They say nothing, but their hesitation screams. They weaponize stillness. They withdraw praise, delay responses, and offer compliments so poisoned with sarcasm that you can taste the fear in them. You're not facing opposition. You're watching evasion. The way they suddenly grow quiet when your name comes up. The way they leave you out of plans, not because you don't belong, but because your presence forces them to recognize how unremarkable they are in contrast. They stop giving effort when it benefits you. They refuse to support what you're building, not because it lacks value, but because they resent that it doesn't need them. That's the core of it, isn't it? Passive resistance is the echo of a bruised ego. Too afraid to challenge, too bitter to support. They hope to slow you with their absence, not realizing you've already learned to build with nothing. While they retreat into indifference, you advance through indestructible focus. Their silence is a page in your playbook. Their inaction, another checkpoint passed. They call it neutrality, but it's just envy covered in decency. They'd rather disappear than admit defeat, and they wear withdrawal like a badge of honor. But you see through it. You always have. That subtle glance, that fake smile, it tells you everything you need to know. You've dealt with louder enemies, the ones who come roaring, charging headfirst into your world. Those were easy. But the ones who smile as they drag their feet, the ones who nod and agree and vanish when it's time to act, those were a different kind of threat. Subtler, but weaker. Their resistance doesn't stop you, it simply gives you contrast. You learn who's aligned with your mission and who's only clapping out of politeness. You learn that silence isn't always peace. It can be sabotage stitched into routine, but your mind slices through it. You speak with action, and they can't drown that out. And they know it. That's the part they don't say out loud. They know their passive games don't hold power over someone who doesn't need permission to rise. They know that each attempt to dull your momentum only sharpens your resolve. Every time they pretend not to see you, they make you harder to ignore. Every time they hold back applause, you become more addicted to mastery. Their passive resistance becomes a strange gift, one you never asked for, but you've learned to turn into momentum. It's poetic, really. The ones who tried to slow you down ended up giving you your rhythm. They hold back support, thinking you'll crumble without their nod of approval. But that's the mistake. They assumed your hunger was external. They never understood that you don't need recognition. You are the recognition. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere. And when they stay quiet, it amplifies your presence. You're not one of them. You were never built for consensus. You don't rely on permission to move forward. You move, and the world adjusts. That's the difference. They resist, you dominate. Let them stay in the background, orchestrating their little acts of rebellion, missing meetings, ignoring progress, avoiding eye contact. Let them sit in their own bitter discomfort, watching you rise without them. Because their silence is a confession. Their avoidance is acknowledgement. They see you. Oh, they see you. They just don't have the courage to admit what you've become. So they retreat, hoping you'll need them again. But that door has already closed, and the sound of it slamming still echoes in their mind. Their resistance doesn't stop you. It exposes them. It reveals who they are when no one's watching. And you keep building, quietly, ruthlessly, without applause, without permission. Your power was never about who noticed. It was about who couldn't unsee it once they did. And that, more than anything, is what breaks them. You don't need to confront them. Your existence is the confrontation. Your growth is the battle cry, and they've already lost. Now watch what happens next. Let their passive resistance grow louder, let their silence get heavier. You've made it impossible for them to ignore you, and soon their only option will be to pretend they always supported you. But you'll remember. You always remember. Because it wasn't their attack that shaped you, it was their absence. It wasn't their hatred that hardened you, it was their distance dressed as neutrality. And it wasn't their noise that mattered, it was your ability to thrive through their silence. You see, their withdrawal wasn't just a coping mechanism, it was a calculated delay. They hoped if they dragged their heels long enough, you'd stumble. If they refused to participate, maybe you'd question yourself. But they misread the core of your evolution. You weren't built on consensus. You didn't bloom because of them. You bloomed despite them. Every step they refused to take beside you simply made your path more yours. And when someone owns their path fully, without shared applause or shared guilt, they become a psychological mirror, one the passive resistor can't stand to look into, because it shows them who they pretend to be and what they'll never become. They treat your growth like a ghost, haunting the corners of their conversation, showing up uninvited in their private thoughts. They whisper your name with a clenched jaw, not because they hate you, but because they failed to stop you in time. And now, you've become the measuring stick. Every win you stack becomes a weight on their chest. They try to stay silent, but that silence becomes a scream when your name enters the room. They shrink into their patterns, slight delays, lukewarm responses, fake neutrality. But you move like gravity. Their passivity can't escape your orbit. They hate how much attention you command by doing what they've avoided their whole lives, facing reality with no filter, no delay, and no fear. And so their passivity evolves into a ritual, not to protect themselves, but to hide their shame. You remind them of every moment they should have spoken but didn't, every action they could have taken but froze. You represent what they buried, and while they try to numb their guilt with silence, you become louder in contrast. Even in stillness, you roar. Even in your calmest moments, your presence disrupts their equilibrium, because your power isn't theatrical, it's surgical. It doesn't need to announce itself, it just is. And they can't fake their way around it anymore. Their passive resistance wasn't about you, it was about what your presence disrupts in them. They needed the comfort of group delusion. They needed the echo chamber where no one rises too far, where no one moves too quickly, where failure is justified as teamwork. But you shattered that. You stepped out of formation, you didn't wait for validation, you executed. Now their retreat isn't strategy, it's self-preservation. Because in the light of your movement, their stagnation becomes a crime scene. And their silence, a confession signed in every nervous glance and half-hearted excuse. So let them linger in the background, let them keep avoiding confrontation, tiptoeing around their own reflection. You've already won. Because while they resist with caution, you move with conviction. While they withhold words, you deliver results. And one day, soon, they'll try to rewrite history, to place themselves closer to your glow than they ever dared to stand in real time. But memory doesn't forget, energy doesn't lie. And you'll always remember who disappeared when the silence got heavy, and who thought hiding was a form of control.